Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the After Stangs Show. I'm Dean Rolski, solo show tonight following SMU's 38 to 28 win over the Boston College Eagles. Look, it wasn't the prettiest performance from SMU, there's no doubt about that, but at the end of the day, they got the job done, they get the win, and they move to 9-1 and 6-0 in conference play and hold on to the top spot in the ACC standings with just a couple games to go. They've got Virginia coming up next week, and I believe a win against the Cavaliers would clinch a spot for the Mustangs in Charlotte on December 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern, which would be quite the feat, considering, of course, it is SMU's first year in the ACC, and they have come in and they have not skipped a beat. And like I said, today wasn't the best performance from SMU by any means. They get the ball to start the game, they drive down the field, get into the red zone, and then you maybe see some of those red zone problems again. I'm not so sure. I think it was just a bad play or two. But then they have to settle for a 25-yard field goal, and Colin Rogers misses it. And that was maybe a little bit of foreshadowing of what was to come the rest of the game, as SMU was not going to be able to put this game away really until the final seconds. But the SMU defense responds, gets a three and out. SMU offense gets the ball near midfield, right around their own 40-yard line, and they drive down the field. And they right their wrong from their first drive, and they get into the end zone to score a touchdown. It was let's see here. It was the Roderick Daniels 15-yard reception, which was a really nice play design, and SMU executed it to perfection. It was the first little play action handoff. Jennings pulls it out, runs to the outside as if he's going to keep it, attracts that nickel corner to come and try and tackle Jennings, and then he slings one out to Roderick Daniels Jr., who was aided by a big block by Moochie Dixon, and Daniels was able to tiptoe his way down the sideline and into the end zone to get the Mustangs on the board. From there, defense gets yet another stop. SMU comes down the field again, gets into the red zone. Maybe some problems there again. SMU has to settle for a 35-yard field goal, which this time Colin Rogers makes, and the Mustangs went up 10-0. And after that point, it started to become a back and forth game. BC took a lot of time off the clock on that first touchdown drive. I believe it was the 13-play drive, and they go down and they score. Yeah, 13 plays, 75 yards taken off, just shy of 6 minutes of game clock. And, they answer back, and it's 10-7, and it's just a 3-point game. After the defense had such a dominant start to the game, just one long drive that they just couldn't get off the field. And that was the story of the game for the defense. And we'll get into it, but there were so many opportunities to get off the field. And I think part of that is also due to the way BC plays, or at least they've been playing recently, where they run the football and they're going to get into a lot of third and shorts, and they're going to give you chances to get off the field, but they're confident they can pick up the first downs in those situations, and they did a lot tonight. But, as BC got back into it, SMU went right back down the field. That was one where I believe it was Roderick Daniels Jr. had a nice return on the kickoff, but it got called back for two holding penalties against the Mustangs. So SMU had to start their next drive at their 8-yard line, but they went the full length of the field, 92 yards in 9 plays, and it was capped off by a 4-yard Rashard Smith touchdown, the man who got to break the rock after the game. Just another great performance from him. It is no surprise that he was over 100 yards rushing with 120, a touchdown out of the backfield from him right there to make it 17-7. And then again, BC answers back 17-14. Another long drive there, 12 plays, 75 yards, 5 minutes of game time. And that was towards the end of the first half. And so SMU gets the ball right after that Boston College touchdown. Jennings tries to thread one over the middle to Roderick Daniels, but he gets hit as he throws. It gets sailed into really quadruple coverage, and it's picked off easily in the end by the Eagles. They get the ball at the SMU 30-yard line with less than a minute to go in the first half, but then after the play, Ja'Kai Clark picks up a personal foul, I believe unsportsmanlike penalty, and that put Boston College in the red zone to start that drive. Now, fortunately, the defense was able to come up clutch. Isaiah Wacobia said after the game he actually wasn't quite sure what the call was on defense for that play, so he just decided to play man-to-man on that receiver and was able to undercut the route and make a big-time play, because not only it was 17-14 in that moment, so not only did that stop BC from, potentially taking the lead or tying the game heading into the half, but on the next play, SMU, 24 seconds left in the first half, they're just thinking, let's just hand this ball off. We'll take our 3-point lead into the half, and we'll, go again in the second half. Well, that was before Brashard Smith broke one 45 yards down to the Pitt 35, and excuse me, the Boston College 35. What I was going to say was it was similar to what happened at the end of the first half against Pitt, where there were, less than 20 seconds left. He darts up the left sideline, and SMU was able to sneak three at the end of the half against Pitt. Well, they were able to do the same thing against Boston College this week to go into the halftime locker room up six instead of three and up 20-14. And at that point, SMU wasn't playing particularly well, but they still had a 6-point lead. And he thought, okay, they'll come back out in the second half. The defense will be able to stop the run maybe a little bit better, put Grayson James in some tougher positions, those, you know, forcing him into pass situations, which of course they did on that final drive, but not really until then. And so SMU came back out the second half, and it was Boston College who took the lead. They went down the field, scored a touchdown. It was a nice touchdown where Grayson James, it's a read option with Robichaux, the running back, and he keeps it. And the whole SMU defense was just fooled by the QB keeper in that play. Grayson James nearly went untouched into the end zone from 20 yards out, and BC has a 21-20 lead in the third quarter. Think we were looking up in the press box. That was the first time SMU had been trailing in the second half of an ACC game at all this season. So it shows you the type of run they've been on. They've been playing super well. But there was certainly some adversity that they had to face in that moment now that they were trailing. But again, the SMU offense responded as they did in the first half whenever BC tried to, get close. Well, this time BC had the lead. The SMU offense really needed to step up, and they did. They go only 6 plays, 75 yards in less than 2 minutes, a minute 53. And that one was capped off by a Jordan Hudson 38-yard touchdown where I believe it was a freshman corner going up against Jordan Hudson, a little stutter step, and he got to the outside and got past his man. And Kevin Jennings put it right in the breadbasket, right in stride for the SMU touchdown. They go for two, a simple handoff to Brashard Smith. He gets a nice push from Stone Evie, and SMU's back up 28-21. And then the game started to slow down a little bit there. That was with 8:52 to go in the third quarter. SMU defense would get a stop, and then the offense would again get close. They were it felt like they were so close to breaking this game open at multiple points in the game, whether it be in the first half or in the second half. But again, SMU had to settle for three, a 37-yard field goal. So I can't remember exactly, but it sounds like SMU was in the red zone there again, and they had to settle for three. But Colin Rogers, you wondered if his confidence would be shaken up after missing that 25-yard field goal to start the game. Well, it certainly wasn't, as he made, 3 or 4 field goals by the end of the game to redeem himself. And so he made a 37-yard field goal there, and SMU went up 31-21. And then there was this really big gap of no scoring where, both teams, let's see if we can look at the drives here. Yeah, it's just SMU made that field goal, and then they had 2 punts in a row, and then Boston College turned it over on downs once. They were very aggressive as well. So, the stat line of Boston College, their third down conversions, they were 6 for 15, which doesn't sound amazing. It felt like they were better than that, but they went 3 for 6 on fourth down. So they were ultra aggressive. Bill O'Brien was super aggressive with his play calling. And so it felt like even when SMU got Boston College to fourth down, the drive wasn't over. Boston College, only punted the ball twice. And I think a lot of that had to do with the first punt was, quite frankly, a shank from the BC punter. And that did not instill a lot of confidence in Bill O'Brien and their special teams game. And so they decided to go for it a lot. And in certain cases, it worked out, and in others, it didn't. But, the game slowed down there significantly with neither team really moving the ball a whole lot until Boston College went 10 plays, 74 yards, 6 minutes, again, a long drive. And they scored a touchdown to make it 31-28. And so what I will say is, thinking back, I don't think I've seen a team run the ball this well consistently against this SMU defense. And we know how well BC ran it a week ago for over 300 yards against Syracuse. But SMU was a top 5, maybe for sure, top 10 rushing defense. And they gave up 180 yards on the ground tonight. And Coach Lashley said after the game, it wasn't great, but it's a lot better than 300 like Syracuse gave up the week prior. So, this was a game, again, when you're a team that runs the ball this much, it's hard to come back in games. And so credit to Boston College. They stayed in it. The defense kept them in it. And even though they would take a lot of time off the clock in their drives, they were still scoring touchdowns, right? They got to 28. So just 4 touchdowns. They, didn't settle for points. They could have, but they went for it a lot of the time. And again, sometimes it paid off, sometimes it didn't. But they were able to finish drives with touchdowns, and that is what kept them in this game. So that was with 5:52 to go in the fourth quarter. Then SMU gets the ball back, and maybe Coach Lashley wasn't exactly sure. It was kind of in between trying to run the clock out versus also trying to go down the field and score. And so they, I think it was just straight passing plays. I could be wrong, but they took some deep shots, and none of them were able to work out, and so SMU was forced to punt the ball. Boston College gets the ball back again. The SMU defense stepped up. This was, the first of the last 2 drives where they really did step up. They got fortunate there with a drop on fourth down from the receiver. Grayson James put the ball a little bit behind the receiver, but it was catchable. And so SMU got away with one there. And then, they go on that. They punt it back. Excuse me. Sorry. So SMU gets the ball back again, and the BC defense holds strong, and the offense gets the ball back, and they're down 3. But again, in a game where the Boston College offense relies so heavily on the run, it's hard in the 2-minute drill for Boston College to get down the field. And so that's when you saw, SMU force BC into these pass situations. And that's where you saw this SMU defensive line finally get to Grayson James. Of course, they were out Elijah Roberts tonight. And you could tell that the impact was there, of course, or, his impact was missed maybe. But that final drive, I think you saw Kobe Wilson get a sack. And then, of course, Jafari Harvey on fourth down. And that he was able to get the sack and force BC to turn it over. But I think that's kind of maybe what SMU expected for the entirety of the game, was when BC was going to drop back and pass. They were going to be able to get pressure on the inexperienced quarterback. And they weren't for big chunks of the game, but they came up clutch, as they have so many times throughout this season. That's how you get to 9-1 season. When you think of back to Nevada, which came up during the press conference, of winning close games, the defense shut the door at the end of the game. When you think about Duke, how many times did the defense come up clutch there? And so the defense came up clutch again, when sometimes throughout the game today, the offense was able to bail them out. It was the defense who really sealed the deal there in the final minute. And then on that last drive, SMU is so close to the end zone that they almost, don't need to pick up the first down to win. They could get into the end zone. And so it was interesting hearing from Coach Lashley after that game, because it got down to 4th and 2 after a nice heads-up play from Jordan Smith on a jet sweep to stay in bounds, go down, and force BC to use their final timeout, or maybe run the clock down to 13 seconds. And it came down to that 4th and 2, and you thought, okay, SMU might kick the field goal here, go up 6, and then there's going to be about 10 seconds for BC to try and get into the end zone. But what Coach Lashley said was, well, let's go for it. And they ran a jet sweep, and he said, by the time that play's over, that's going to take 5 to 6 seconds off the clock. Even if you don't get into the end zone or get the first down, you've got BC really inside their own 5-yard line with a few seconds to go and no timeouts. But then, of course, Keyshawn Smith was able to fight through contact and get into the end zone. So it worked out. And Coach Lashley joked after the game, maybe the analytics would have said he shouldn't have scored, but he doesn't care. They got into the end zone, got ultimately the 10-point win, which some nice style points there, which you never know in the college football playoff what could happen. But SMU was able to win it 38-28. So now that we've gone through the play-by-play there, let's just break down the offense and the defense. Kevin Jennings, really, really good game from him. 24 of 35, just shy of 300 yards, 298, 3 touchdowns, and the 1 interception that came at the end of the first half, which, of course, was negated, if you will, by the Wachovia interception. So he was super strong. The run game wasn't maybe as strong as SMU would have liked. They only ran it 30 times. We know they like to try and get to that 40 number. But besides that 45-yard run from Brashard Smith and an LJ Johnson first down run on that opening drive, and you kind of thought, okay, maybe he's going to get some carries today. Well, LJ finished with 7 carries for 21 yards, so not his most productive night. But SMU maybe didn't find all the success they wanted to on the ground tonight. We saw multiple injuries across the offensive line. Justin Osborne came out at different points, but he came back into the game. Savion Byrd went down and then came back in and then went down again, and then he went to the locker room. We did not get a super clear answer on his injury post game from Coach Lashley. He said he didn't have the details himself, but on a side note, he did say he expects Elijah Roberts back for next week, which is great. As again, SMU will look to, clinch a spot in the ACC championship. So the offense, I think overall did great. Credit to the wide receiver room. Matthew Hibner did not have a catch. I'm not even sure if he had a target. Maybe one there at the end on a bit of a fade route. But Jordan Hudson, great game from him, just shy of 100 yards at 99. But I think his teammates called it a breakout game for him, and they knew it was coming. 7 receptions, 99 yards, a touchdown. And of course, the touchdown was the 38-yard connection. And what works well there is so many times throughout the game, you'll just see Jordan Hudson go 10 yards and come back. And so when you do that so often, you can get the corner to maybe bite on that, and then he'll sneak around you for the deep one, and that's what SMU was able to do tonight. Thought Keyshawn Smith was great. He made some really impressive catches, as he seems to do every week at this point. Keyshawn Smith is really impressed. No Jake Bailey tonight for SMU, so Roderick Daniels was back in the slot. Of course, he had the opening touchdown for SMU. He had a nice game overall, 4 receptions, 79 yards, and a touchdown. And then Moochie Dixon, again, just solid 4 receptions for 46 yards. Rashard Smith, 4 receptions for 13 yards out of the backfield. But you're talking about only 5 total players catching passes from Kevin Jennings tonight. That felt a little low from really the last 2 years. I know a lot of people have talked about the wide receiver by committee. Well, tonight it felt like it was just certain players that, stepped up in the spotlight and came through for the Mustangs. So, yeah, again, overall, you can't say enough about how great Kevin Jennings is playing right now. You know, Coach Saban was talking about him again on College Game Day ahead of tonight's game, and he proved Saban right with all of his praise as he's just breaking sacks, extending plays. I think it's been impressive too when he's able to escape the pocket. He's not just tucking it and running it, which maybe we saw him do earlier on in his only short career as the starter. But now he's still keeping his eyes downfield late, making throws across the middle, just great timing, hitting his guys in stride. It's been really impressive. So again, you just can't say it enough about how well Kevin Jennings is playing right now. Um, and then on the defensive side, a couple of guys stand out. Kobe Wilson, 16 tackles, 8 solo, a tackle for loss, and a pass breakup. Almost had a one-handed interception there in the first half. Just couldn't bring it down, but a ridiculous number from Kobe Wilson. I mean, he is just a magnet to the football. I'm not sure what else you can say. I mean, it seems like it's always one of the linebackers or the safeties, at the top of the tackle board, leaderboard, whatever you want to call it. But Kobe Wilson today was far and away the clear number one guy on defense for SMU. Isaiah Wacobia was second with 9, but of course he had the interception again at the end of the first half. So, however you want to value that and try and weigh out who had the better performance, it was a interesting performance from the defense. Again, they came up clutch in the moments when the team needed them. So you can't fault them for tonight's performance. I just think BC had a good game plan coming in. They ran the ball well. They did some nice misdirection where they'd get the quarterback rolling out and then slide a handoff to the running back, and they found holes again. This was probably the best I've seen a team run the ball against SMU all season long, as much as I can remember. I know Nevada actually ran it pretty well against SMU, but that was so early on. This defense is a lot better now too. Um, but they didn't force a ton of turnovers. I thought they could have had a few more interceptions. I really do. I think they had chances to pick off Grayson James, and they just couldn't take advantage. So missed opportunities there. Again, the third and fourth down thing. There were some costly penalties. You give up a third and 20 at one point, and then BC converts on a third and goal from the 13 and gets into the end zone. So they played really well on first and second down for whatever that's worth. I think they played really, really well on the first 2 downs, but then they gave up some big plays on third and fourth down, and that's what allowed BC to stay in it for as long as they did, which is pretty much the entire game. So yeah, again, the pressure wasn't as consistent as maybe SMU fans would want, but when you lose a guy like Elijah Roberts, not that the whole defensive line all of a sudden is bad, they still played well. But when you lose a key guy like him, yeah, that's going to hurt the defensive line. I'm not going to act like it's not. So it'll be good to hopefully have him back next week as they travel to Virginia. 11 a.m. kickoff, ESPN2. Hopefully they can take care of business, clinch their spot early on next Saturday, and just kind of watch the rest of the games unfold. At this point, with the way the seating is and SMU maybe not blowing out and really showing the eye test to the committee this week, I think it's going to have to be ACC championship or bust, if you would call it that, in terms of getting into the college football playoff. I just think that the road to an at-large bid is increasingly difficult with the amount of two-loss teams. Of course, now there's another one, as Georgia has just beaten Tennessee, so Georgia's on 2 losses. Tennessee, Texas is still on one. A&M, I mean, there's six, I want to say, teams now, as Missouri lost to South Carolina, so that knocked off one of the 2 loss teams. I think there's one or 2 loss teams in the SEC, and I just find it hard to believe SMU will get put in over any one of those teams. And so I do think it is championship or bust, and I think that's okay. I think that's kind of what it was always going to be. It was a little bit of wishful thinking for some SMU fans to think that they were going to sneak in a not large bid. We'll see. I mean, Florida beat LSU this week, and Ole Miss has to go to the Swamp next week, and Billy Napier is kind of turning that team around. They're playing well. There are some opportunities. Could Georgia Tech do a huge favor for the ACC and beat Georgia in the final week? I guess it's possible, but I wouldn't get your hopes up. So I think SMU now, they've just got to close out these final 2 weeks, take care of business, and then get ready for a trip to Charlotte with, again, it looks like they'll be taking on Miami. Clemson with some Cade Klubnik with some heroics today, the 50-yard run with less than 90 seconds to go to take the lead against Pitt, and they were able to hang on 24-20 there. So they're still in the race. If SMU loses to, I'm not even going to bring it up, but Clemson is still in the race. SMU's got to take care of business the next 2 weeks. There's not a lot of margin for error at this point, but that's what you get when you're competing for a spot in the college football playoff and ultimately a national championship. There shouldn't be, much room for error. So SMU, no major injuries from tonight, which is of course a positive. Um, yeah, they take care of business. 38-28, the last second touchdown makes it look a little bit better than maybe it was, but maybe that's the result of the Pitt game looking a little bit closer than that actually was. So it all evens out. But SMU, at the end of the day, is 9-1, 6-0 in conference play, the only undefeated team in conference play remaining in the ACC. And again, all alone at the top of the standings. So no more bye weeks. They just had their final one, so you just got to push on here. They're into the heart of November. This is the new SMU. They finish. That was Roderick Daniels said that is the main mentality of this team is finish every play, drive, quarter, and of course game. So SMU's just got to finish out this season now. They've put themselves in an incredible position. They've just got to go take advantage. So with that, I think I am going to wrap it up here. Hope you guys enjoy the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy the game. The black jerseys, SMU moves to 3-0 in the black jerseys, so I know it's not everybody's favorite, but they do well when they play in them, I guess. The crowd today, I thought it was good. I know people weren't necessarily happy with the whole blackout and wearing black, but I thought the student section showed up. It was packed. And I thought that was the biggest group we've had in the fourth quarter probably all season long. And of course, part of that is due to it being a close game to where really every other home game, barring BYU, which we lost, or SMU lost, has been a blowout. So great job from the fans today. Coach Lashley praised them. Kevin Jennings praised them. It was just a great moment there as you saw Kevin Jennings was able to jump into the student section at the end of the game. And then I saw him walking out of the end zone complex. He's with his whole family and just, taking in these moments. It's a special season for SMU. But again, they just got to keep going. They got to keep pushing on. And they'll look to do that next week, Saturday, 11 a.m. kick, 12 o'clock Eastern on the East Coast in Charlottesville, where they will look to clinch a spot in the ACC championship in year one of being in the ACC, something that has never been done before, from the jump up to the G5 to the P4. So potential history added on to what's already been, of course, a historic season for SMU. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up. I'm Dean Rolski. Hope you've enjoyed watching the After Stang Show, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.